Welcome to Seirei Academy, a prestigious private school where the elite of Japan gather. It's the kind of place where your future is basically set the moment you walk through those gates. But even among all these high achievers, there's one girl who stands way above the rest. As she walks by, every guy in the hallway can't help but stop and stare. Her name is Alisa Mikhailovna Kujo, but everyone just calls her Alia. She's half Russian, half Japanese, and basically a miracle of beauty that looks like she stepped out of a movie. Alia isn't just a pretty face, she's top of her class in academics, a monster at sports, and serves as the student council treasurer. People call her the aloof princess because she's just that perfect. The school's most popular guy, Ando-senpai, decides it's time to test his luck. His friends watch from the side, betting on whether he can actually get a word out of her. He tries the smooth approach, asking her out for lunch, but Alia shuts him down with a cold no thank you before he can even finish his pitch. It's a total shutdown in record time. Ando doesn't take the hint and tries to push his contact info on her, but Alia isn't having any of it. She makes it very clear that she has zero interest in him. To add salt to the wound, she calls him out for violating the dress code. As she walks away, she whispers disgusting in Russian, thinking no one can understand her secret insult. The crowd is left in shock. Seeing the school stud get destroyed like that just reinforces why she's known as the aloof princess. She's basically unreachable for everyone. The guys wonder what kind of superhuman guy she'd actually be interested in. Meanwhile, Alia enters her classroom, clearly annoyed by the loud snoring coming from the back. She walks straight to the back and kicks a desk to wake up Masachika Q's. He's the resident slacker, and surprisingly, the only person who calls her by her nickname, Alia. Masachika is the laziest student in school, and his excuse for being a zombie is staying up all night watching anime. Alia scolds him for being such a slob, but he just shrugs it off. He leans back and leans into his otaku lifestyle, much to Alia's frustration. The other guys in class are amazed that he can survive her icy glares without breaking a sweat. Classmates whisper about how Q's is the only one Alia ever really interacts with, even if it's just to yell at him. They think it's some kind of weird dynamic where she only lets her guard down to be annoyed. As the lecture starts, Alia stays focused like the perfect student she is, while Masachika is already reaching his limit for staying awake. He stretches out, looking for any excuse to zone out. He lets out a massive yawn, looking completely defeated by the morning lesson. Alia glares at him from the side, but her expression softens for just a split second. Suddenly, Alia leans in and whispers cutie in Russian while looking right at him. She thinks she's safe blurting out her true feelings since nobody knows the language. Masachika stares back, and Alia immediately panics, going back to her prickly persona. She denies saying anything and starts insulting his disgraceful attitude to cover up her blush. She giggles to herself in Russian, calling him a fool for not realizing she just praised him. She's enjoying the fact that she can be honest about her feelings right to his face without him knowing. Alia keeps going, thinking he'd look so much better if he just acted more serious. Masachika sits there, sweating buckets while his pen hovers over his notebook. Inside, Masachika is screaming. He understands every single word she's saying. He realizes that her icy exterior is just a cover for how she actually feels about him. It turns out his granddad was a huge fan of Russian movies, and Masachika ended up learning the language just by watching them. He's been keeping this a secret from everyone, including Alia. The teacher notices him acting strange, but Alia just brushes it off as him being his usual weird self. Masachika realizes he's the only one who hears her true, sweet voice. Despite the internal chaos, class continues with the sound of chalk on the board. Masachika tries to focus, but he's already starting to nod off again. Alia has zero patience for his napping and stabs him in the ribs with her pen. She's not about to let him sleep after she went through the trouble of sharing her textbook. Masachika yelps in pain, and when the teacher calls on her, he quickly whispers the right answer to help her out. She repeats it correctly, but she's still fuming that he dared to fall asleep. He complains about her being misleading, but Alia just turns away and mutters cutie in Russian again. She thinks she's got him totally fooled with her act. Masachika looks at her, realizing this happens all the time. She blurts out these crazy, sweet things in Russian, convinced that she's the only one who knows what they mean. He concludes that she's a total mental exhibitionist who loves the thrill of potentially getting caught saying embarrassing things. It's her way of letting off steam from being so perfect all the time. Alia switches back to Japanese and laughs at him, saying she'd rather die than have any affection for him. She's laying it on thick to hide her embarrassment as class finally ends. She hands back the textbook with her usual cold attitude, telling him she won't lend it again. Masachika tries to apologize, promising to get his act together for the afternoon. But as soon as she's gone, he pulls out his phone to grind a gacha game before the daily loot box expires. He actually manages to pull a super rare character, SSR Tsukayomi. Alia catches him in the act and isn't impressed by his degenerate gamer behavior. Masachika begs for mercy, explaining just how lucky that pull was and why he couldn't wait. He claims that any guy would be obsessed with a cute, silver-haired character like this. Alia blushes and thinks in Russian that she has silver hair too, wondering if he meant her. She confiscates his phone anyway, reminding him that she's a student council member and can't let this slide. Masachika is devastated, crying out about his unsaved progress. Alia thinks back to her sister Maria, who always teases her about her hidden feelings. She realizes that her habit of speaking Russian might be a bigger liability than she thought. Down in the cafeteria, one of the guys is having a total meltdown about his lack of luck with girls. Masachika is just trying to enjoy some extra spicy ramen in peace. His friends Hikaru and Takeshi join him, wondering how he can eat something that looks like liquid fire. They tell their crying friend that his life is intense enough without adding spicy food to the mix. Masachika is still mourning his lost gacha stones, while his friends are just jealous that he gets to sit next to a hottie like Alia every single day. They think he's living the dream. He tries to tell them she's way simpler than they think, but they just tell him to quit acting like she's his girlfriend. They remind him that she barely speaks to anyone else. The guys acknowledge that Masachika is actually a high-spec guy hidden by his own laziness. They mention how he even did student council back in middle school before giving it all up. Suddenly, the cafeteria goes quiet as the three school princesses arrive. Leading the group is Yuki Suo, followed by the Kujo sisters, making a grand entrance that stops everyone in their tracks. Down in the cafeteria, the mood shifts as the three princesses of the student council walk in. Maria, the second-year secretary, and Alia are looking for a place to sit, but the crowd is making it hard to find a spot. Joining them is Yuki Suo, the first-year PR chair. She's the daughter of a legendary diplomat family, basically school royalty. Every guy in the room is losing their mind just being in her presence. The school has titles for all of them. Alia is the aloof princess, Maria is the Madonna of the academy, and Yuki is the sheltered little princess. Together, they're the ultimate beauty trio of Seirei Academy. Back at Masachika's table, his friends are staring like their lives depend on it. They tease him about how he'll never get a girlfriend because he spends all his time giving people weird nicknames and watching anime. Masachika just sighs, thinking that having a girlfriend is basically a fantasy for a guy like him. His friends keep piling on, roasting his Velcro wallet and his otaku dates. The roasting session is cut short when Yuki and Alia suddenly appear at their table. Yuki asks if they mind if they sit there, calling Masachika by name and leaving the entire cafeteria in stunned silence. Yuki doesn't waste any time and starts digging into her spicy ramen. She's surprisingly a fan of the heat, while Masachika just watches, wondering how someone who looks so elegant can handle that much spice. She jokes about making spicy food a student council requirement, which Masachika quickly calls out as an abuse of authority. They're bantering like old friends, and it's driving everyone else crazy with jealousy. Yuki turns to Alia and asks if she and Masachika are friends. Alia gets totally flustered, trying to keep her cool princess act together while coming up with a response. Yuki beats her to the punch, revealing that she and Masachika have actually been friends since they were little kids. Alia's mind is officially blown by this piece of news. Masachika tries to make a break for it, but Yuki grabs his arm and won't let go. The rest of the guys are now convinced he's some secret harem protagonist living out a rom-com. He's dying of embarrassment while Yuki just keeps the reveals coming. She tells Alia they've been going to the same schools since kindergarten. Alia is just staring at them, completely frozen. Alia is struggling to connect the dots. She thought Masachika was just a lazy slacker, but he apparently has deep history with one of the most elite students in school. She doesn't know what to think anymore. Masachika gets serious for a moment and asks Yuki if she actually finds it fun to hang out with him. Yuki's expression turns surprisingly gentle as she looks at him. He then turns the question to Alia, asking if she's against the idea of being friends in general. Alia blushes hard, caught totally off guard by the direct question. Yuki jumps back in, enthusiastically declaring that they should all be friends. Masachika wonders if he went too far, but Yuki seems genuinely happy about the idea. Yuki mentions that Masachika has a special kind of respect for people who work hard. Alia listens intently, and you can see that something about those words really hits home for her. Masachika is clearly embarrassed by the praise. Alia, her face turning pink, whispers the word respect in Russian, echoing Yuki's sentiment to herself. She's turning a bright, bashful red. She tries to hide behind her food, feeling completely overwhelmed by the sudden turn the conversation has taken. The tension is too much, and she snaps in Russian, calling him an idiot for staring. She claims that being respected by him doesn't make her happy at all, but her blushing face says the exact opposite. Yuki just ignores the outburst and asks Masachika if he's thought any more about returning to the student council. He gives her a flat no without even hesitating. Alia is shocked to learn that he was ever a member to begin with. Yuki spills the rest of the secrets. Masachika was actually the vice president of the student council back in middle school. Alia is in total disbelief. She can't wrap her head around the idea that the guy who sleeps through every class used to be a high-ranking student leader. Yuki confirms that she was the president and he was her right hand. Yuki points out that while he might be lazy now, Masachika is the type to work incredibly hard when he actually wants something. Masachika just wants the ground to swallow him whole. Alia is still staring at him, trying to reconcile this new information with the slacker she knows. Masachika is trying to disappear by burying his face in his arms. He explains that he only became VP because he lost a bet, trying his best to downplay his past achievements. He wants Alia to believe it was all just a fluke. Yuki starts playfully teasing him, tickling him while they talk. Alia's irritation starts to show as she watches how intimate the two of them are. Yuki drops one more bombshell. They used to take baths together when they were kids. Alia is now visibly fuming, her hand literally shaking as she holds her fork. Alia snaps in Russian again, complaining that everyone is watching, and that Masachika never told her anything about this. Her jealousy is reaching a boiling point. Masachika knows exactly what she's complaining about. Alia abruptly stands up, announcing that she needs to get to the student council office immediately. Yuki makes one final push for him to join, but he's not budging. She finally says her goodbyes, leaving Alia and Masachika alone together. Alia stops and looks him right in the eyes, asking one more time if they are actually friends. She looks nervous, like she's really invested in the answer. Masachika confirms it, telling her she's definitely a female friend. Alia looks stunned, like she wasn't expecting him to be so direct about it. She blushes deeply and repeats the words back to him. For a second, the aloof princess act is completely gone, replaced by a quiet, genuine smile. Then she snaps back into her prickly self, yelling at him to get away and not to point at people. She tells him pointing is rude in Russia and runs off. Alia glances back at him one last time with a small, happy smile. Masachika is left standing in the hallway, completely baffled by her sudden mood swings. The scene shifts to an empty classroom after school. Masachika has Alia cornered by the window, and he's apparently determined to help her with something. He's holding her ankle, trying to help her put on a pair of brand new socks. Alia is absolutely dying of embarrassment, her face turning a deep shade of red. He tells her to stay still, but Alia is way too flustered to keep her cool. She tries to insist she can do it herself, but Masachika is being surprisingly firm. He warns her he's about to touch her, and Alia lets out a little squeak as his hand makes contact with her foot. She's way more sensitive than she wants to admit. Alia is panicking, claiming she's only acting like this because she's ticklish. Masachika tells her not to kick around while he's trying to help her out. Both of them are blushing like crazy now. Masachika admits he only wanted to surprise her a little, while Alia is just trying to survive the sheer embarrassment of the moment. Both Masachika and Alia are blushing furiously, their hearts pounding so loudly they can almost hear them. The atmosphere in the empty classroom is charged with an awkward but undeniable tension as he holds her foot. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps and voices approach the classroom. The door slides open, and the moment is shattered. Masachika and Alia freeze, caught in a position that's impossible to explain to anyone walking in. Two other students walk into the room, chatting about their morning practice. They don't see Masachika and Alia right away, as the pair is hidden behind a row of desks and the window curtain. Alia is absolutely mortified, her face buried against Masachika's chest as he pulls her close to keep her out of sight. The intimacy of the hug is overwhelming, and she can feel the heat radiating from him. Alia whispers a frantic hey, questioning why he's taking the opportunity to hug her so tightly. Masachika frantically tells her to shut up, pointing out that if he lets go now, she'll tumble headfirst right out of the window. The two students notice something is off and start closing the open windows. Masachika and Alia are trapped, hiding in plain sight. They can only hope the other guys don't look too closely at the curtained area. Masachika is sweating bullets, thinking they're as good as dead if they're found like this. He can hear the footsteps getting closer, and the panic is visible in his wide eyes. Alia is just as terrified, her eyes wide with shock. Fortunately, the other guys decide to head to the vending machine instead, seemingly oblivious to the drama unfolding just a few feet away. Masachika breathes a sigh of relief, but he knows they've just created a potentially terminal misunderstanding. Once the coast is clear, Masachika lets go and apologizes for putting her in such an awkward spot. Alia is still reeling, her face a bright shade of crimson as she tries to regain her composure. She asks how much longer he was planning to touch her, giving him a playful yet embarrassed shove. Alia sits back on the windowsill, looking down at her legs and then up at him with a confused, questioning expression. The moment of panic has passed, but the lingering intimacy of their hide-and-seek game still hangs in the air. The sheer embarrassment finally catches up to Alia. She turns away, unable to look him in the eye. The memory of his hands on her and his chest against hers is burned into her mind, and she feels like she might burst from the shame. She snaps at him in Russian, telling him to stop silently staring at her. She demands he forget everything he saw and runs off, leaving a stunned Masachika lying on the classroom floor. Her heart is racing faster than ever. After school, Alia is still in a state of shock. She walks through the halls, her hands over her face as she tries to calm her beating heart. She can't believe what happened, and she can't stop thinking about Masachika's touch. To her, it's a total nightmare. In the classroom, other students are whispering about Princess Alia and how she's been unusually grumpy all day. They assume Masachika must have done something to offend her, as usual. Masachika just sits at his desk, looking exhausted. Alia's internal monologue is a mess of self-blame. She knows it wasn't his fault, but the memory of him touching her leg and seeing her underwear is too much. She just wants to disappear from the face of the earth. She tries to calm herself down, telling herself she's not angry anymore and that she actually wants to apologize. But then she looks at Masachika, and the shame comes rushing back. She slams her head onto her desk, much to the confusion of the students around her. Masachika finally works up the courage to approach her, He apologizes for everything that happened in the morning. Alia tries to keep it as cool as possible, insisting she's not angry or anything. She's like a volcano about to erupt from the pressure of her own feelings. He offers her a can of sweet Shiruko from the vending machine as a peace offering. It's a notoriously sweet drink that only a few people actually like. Alia is surprised that he knew she drinks it every now and then. This small gesture of attention makes her heart skip a beat. Alia accepts the drink, her fingers brushing his as she takes the can. She's still acting a bit prickly, telling him she'll accept it then. Masachika is just relieved she's not yelling at him anymore. He makes his exit, leaving her to process her feelings. Alia watches him walk away, her expression softening. She calls out to him, her voice much gentler. She wants to say sorry too for kicking him and all that. It's a rare moment of vulnerability for the aloof princess. Then, in a soft whisper in Russian, she adds that she wants them to continue being friends. Masachika doesn't quite hear her, or maybe he's pretending not to. Alia quickly snaps back, telling him not to tell anyone what happened. She's embarrassed, but her heart is finally at ease. Masachika leaves with a small smile, and Alia is left in the classroom, her cheeks still flushed. She's relieved their friendship is intact, but she's also starting to realize that her feelings for him might be more complicated than she thought. She rushes off to her next commitment. Later that day, Alia arrives home. As she walks through the door, she's greeted by her older sister, Maria Masha, who is as warm and welcoming as ever. Masha is clearly excited to see her little sister back home. Masha pulls Alia into a tight, affectionate hug, showering her with cheek kisses. Alia tries to play it off, complaining that she can't breathe, but she clearly appreciates the love. Masha even teases her about calling her one-chan in Japanese style. Masha notices that Alia is carrying the can of Shiruko and teases her about it, asking if she got it from the school vending machine. Alia gets defensive, telling her not to touch it. Masha's playful curiosity is clearly getting under Alia's skin. Masha takes one look at Alia's face and knows something is up. She asks if something happened with Q's-kun again. Alia tries to deny it, but her bright red cheeks tell the whole story. Masha isn't buying her sister's abnormal act for a second. Alia eventually admits they had a little fight but made up. Masha is delighted to hear they reconciled, wondering if the Shiruko was an I'm sorry gift. She's impressed that Masachika knew exactly what kind of sweet stuff Alia likes. Alia is annoyed by her sister's keen intuition. Masha gets a serious, knowing look in her eyes. She tells Alia that she's finally found someone who can move her heart. She reminds Alia that she's also a young girl in love, which only makes Alia even more flustered and confused. Masha flat out asks Alia if she loves Masachika. Alia's reaction is immediate and explosive denial. She claims there's nothing like that between them at all, but Masha just smiles, unconvinced by her sister's frantic protests. The conversation takes a more introspective turn as Alia looks at the can of Shiruko. She recalls Masachika calling her a female friend. Even though she denied it to her sister, the memory brings a small, genuine smile to her face. She treasures their bond, whatever it may be. Masha asks Alia why she decided to befriend someone like Masachika, given her usual dislike for lazy people. Alia is forced to think about what first drew her to him, leading her into a deep state of reflection. Masha just watches her with a warm, supportive smile. Alia's mind drifts back to their first encounters. She remembers walking into the classroom and finding him fast asleep at his desk, even with a crowd of students around. He seemed so disinterested in everything, which was something she had never encountered before. She remembers the moment they officially met. He was so casual about everything, even her impressive introduction to the class. His lack of interest in her princess status was both confusing and strangely intriguing to her. It was the first time she'd been treated like just another student. He would yawn and stretch during class, seemingly oblivious to the academic pressures around him. Alia couldn't help but take an ever so slight interest in this guy who seemed so out of place in their prestigious school. He was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Alia recalls how that initial intrigue quickly faded when she realized he just had no enthusiasm for anything. He would forget his homework and even his textbooks, often having to ask her to lend him hers. She began to see him as just another lazy student, similar to many others she'd seen. 10 minutes later, he'd be sleeping again. Alia felt a sense of disappointment, realizing he wasn't as special as she'd initially thought. She convinced herself that people like him were everywhere and that he wasn't worth her time or attention. But still, she couldn't help but look at him. The memory shifts to September, when their class was preparing for the school fair. The class president excitedly announces that they'll be holding a haunted house, and the room erupts in cheers. Alia watches the enthusiasm of her classmates, feeling a bit detached from it all. A few weeks later, Alia is working with the wardrobe team. The other girls are full of energy, excited to work together on the costumes. Alia, as usual, is the most serious one, taking her responsibilities very seriously, while the others are more focused on having fun. As time goes on, the initial eagerness of the team starts to fade. Alia finds herself working mostly alone, while her teammates chat and slack off. She's frustrated by the lack of progress and the lack of commitment from the others. She realizes they aren't going to finish on time at this rate. The other girls start leaving early, claiming they have exam prep or practice. They tell Alia it's just a school fair anyway, and there's no point in being so serious about it. Alia is left alone, her eyes filled with a mix of hurt and determination. She refuses to compromise on quality. Even after the others leave, Alia stays late to continue working on the costumes. She's determined to make something good, even if she has to do it all by herself. She accidentally pricks her finger with a needle, but she just keeps going, her resolve unshaken. She wants to be the ideal student, no matter what. Alia wraps a bandage around her finger, her eyes filled with tears of frustration and exhaustion. She's starting to feel the weight of her own high standards. She doesn't mind being alone if it means achieving her goals, but it's a lonely path to walk. She's reaching her limit. Suddenly, the door slides open and Masachika walks in, surprising Alia. He looks at her and casually comments, "You did stick around, huh?" His unexpected appearance caught her off guard in her moment of vulnerability. Alia, with tears still in her eyes, looks at him in shock. She can only manage to stammer his name, Kyu's-kun. The sight of her crying clearly affects him more than he's letting on. Masachika walks into the room, scratching his head. He tells her it's really fine and that she just has too much stuff to do. Alia, regaining some of her spunk, snaps back that she didn't ask for his opinion. She's annoyed that he's seeing her like this. Masachika asks her what the point of striving so hard all by herself is. He suggests she just have everyone else help her tomorrow. His words hit a nerve, as they challenge the very way Alia has been living her life. She thinks he's being immature. Alia's internal monologue reveals that his words caused all her bottled-up emotions to finally burst out. She turns to him, her face flushed with a mix of anger and sadness, and asks what he means by "what's the point?" She can't understand his laid-back attitude. She yells at him, admitted she's being selfish, and that's why she's happy to put in enough effort for everyone. She asks him if there's something wrong with that, her voice cracking with emotion. She's defending her core values to the one person who seems to disregard them. Masachika looks at her with a soft, almost pitying expression. He tells her she's pointing all that effort in the wrong direction. Alia is taken aback by his calm, steady gaze. She doesn't know how to respond to someone who isn't intimidated by her outburst. He gently points out that a school fair isn't meant to be a solo effort and that everyone is supposed to pitch in to build it up. Alia looks away, her eyes welling up again. His simple logic is hard to argue with, even if it feels like he's undermining her hard work. Alia tries to argue back, saying that it never happens that way and that it always ends up with her doing everything. She tells him he has to face reality and that it's not that simple. She's clinging to her cynicism as a defense mechanism. Suddenly, Masachika's tone shifts completely. He pulls out a piece of paper and, in a high-pitched, infomercial-like voice, starts pitching her a handy tool. He's got permission for the class to use the athletic dorm for short-term immersion sessions. Alia is completely bewildered by this sudden change in personality. He explains that the exclusive event atmosphere will help boost the whole group's motivation. Alia is stunned, wondering how he even managed to get permission for something like that. She's starting to realize that Masachika might have been working behind the scenes this whole time. He further reveals that the Handicraft Club has agreed to help out with the costumes, thanks to a friend of his on the student council. Alia is speechless. Instead of just slacking off, he was actually finding ways to make her life easier. She thinks it would make for a much better final product. Alia realizes that Masachika was right and that he might be much more talented than she gave him credit for. She feels a pang of guilt for not even considering other methods. The realization is painful, as it forces her to admit her own narrow-mindedness. She finds him rather amazing. She feels so stupid for all her flailing around and for making herself so miserable. She couldn't even bring herself to thank him properly for his help. She stands there, looking down, overwhelmed by a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. She's finally beginning to see him for who he really is. Masachika tells her he knows she's trying her best. Alia is moved by his kindness, her eyes welling up with tears once again. This time, they aren't tears of frustration, but tears of relief. He's the first person who truly understands her struggle. He apologizes if he came off as mean, admitting he just wanted her to know there are ways to avoid being a one-girl show. Alia hides her face in her scarf, unable to look at his gentle, smiling face. Her heart is racing as she processes this new side of him. Masachika tells her to head on home for now, and Alia gives a small, shy nod. As she walks away, she can't help but feel a warmth in her chest that wasn't there before. He wishes her safe travels, and she leaves with a lightened heart. The dynamic between them has changed forever. As she walks home, Alia huffs in Russian, calling him awful and lazy but capable. But then, in a very soft whisper, she says thank you. She's finally admitted to herself that she's grateful for his presence in her life. This was the moment she truly started falling for him.